Good morning, Dubai. Welcome back to the Love in Dubai show, where we go through all the trending stories that everyone in Dubai is talking about. Today, UAE forces have destructed and intercepted 3 hostile drones in UAE airspace.
We'll also be talking about a UAE couple that filed for divorce within 24 hours of being married.
If you're catching a taxi right now, you can expect peak fares to be updated as the RTA has updated its peak times, and with that, peak fares start at 12 dirham.
And Dubai added more than 1,300 new F&B outlets in 2021, so that's a fun trivia ahead.
And stay tuned, because later in the show, we're going to be joined by Dr. Arif Khan, who is the founder of the first Children's Neuroscience Centre in the region. He's answering your questions. We put it out on social if you had any questions for him, and we got those answered yesterday in our chat. But before we get into it all, good morning to you all, everyone going out to work every single day. You know, we're humble people, and I just saw a report of what people are making on TikTok, and I'm like, I could do it. I could go onto TikTok and I could do the dancing. Yeah, I would. Do you know? Carly D'Amelio, she's a dancer. Highest earning TikTok star. Do you know how much she's making?
It's crazy. I can see it there. And it's just insane. The figure is $17.5 million just dancing.
Per year. It makes you rethink. The report for top earning TikTokers out, and they're doing well. Addison Rae, we know her, she's making 8.5 million. Josh Richards, he's the 5th highest TikTok star, he's earning 5 million a year.
5 million
just from TikTok.
I think we just gotta level up our personal TikTok game. No, and I think you can. You river dance.
Yeah.
Just record that, put it out there, it becomes a viral sensation. You just need that one video.
Why don't we collab? I'll do river dance. You do your dancing.
And then Shahir does his dancing.
And then Shahir does his dancing.
No.
On that note, let's jump into our top stories today. Unfortunately, we've had another destruction of property. The UAE forces have destructed and intercepted 3 hostile drones in UAE airspace. So the Minister of Defense announces this on Twitter. It happened away from populated areas. 3 hostile drones by Houthi rebels penetrated UAE airspace on the dawn of 2nd of 2nd, 2022, which was yesterday.
Now, this is the 3rd time the UAE forces have intercepted and destroyed drones targeted at the UAE by hostile forces since the Abu Dhabi terror attacks on January 17th.
And in a tweet last night, the UAE confirmed again that it is ready to deal with any threats, and it is taking all necessary measures to protect the state and its territory. And of course, with that, that includes its people.
Yes, very true. And we'll move on to our next story. That a UAE couple filed for divorce within 24 hours of being married. Now, we're only a handful of days away from the highly celebrated Valentine's Day. So before embarking upon a week of lovey-dovey stories, here's some not so romantic news. So according to the Ministry of Justice in the UAE, 648 divorce cases were recorded in the UAE in 2021, which is last year. And among that was a couple who divorced within 24 hours of tying the knot, and and that made it the shortest marriage recorded in the country in 2021. Now, another couple filed for divorce after being married for 47 years, and it was the longest marriage that ended last year.
So sad. The ministry stats indicate that 194 divorce cases were of expats, while 311 divorce cases involved Emirati couples, and 15 divorce cases were between female Emiratis and non-Emiratis.
And some identified reasons for broken marriages suggest that infidelity, extramarital affairs, lack of commitment, poor or lack of communication, physical and verbal abuse, unrealistic expectations are just a few common factors that result in separations. And I think that is so fitting. Personally, I think in a relationship, be it any relationship, communication is the key factor.
100%, because that leads to all the other things breaking down. But it's just really sad news.
It is sad, yeah.
So what was that? The stats that we have there. So we have the stats for the shortest divorce, which was.
Come on, Casey.
Oh, sorry. Shortest divorce.
1 second.
So 24 hours of being married.
24 hours, yes.
And then the longest is 47 years. So 24 hours begs the question of why.
I mean, Shahir was asking all the right questions this morning. Why? Like, what led to that a divorce within 24 hours? And then you checked online.
So we Googled what was the shortest divorce in history, and it's actually a Kuwait story. incredible story that apparently the couple, after 3 minutes of marriage, they were leaving the courthouse where they'd gotten married. They were walking out and the bride tripped and the groom called her stupid. And the bride was like, no, not taking this. I'm going back in. And she got the judge to annul the marriage, I guess, or she got an official divorce. She demanded it from the judge right then. There's some reports as to how true that is. But they do. It actually is officially one of the shortest divorces in history.
I so get that. Like, not having it, this is not for me. I'm not taking this.
After 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Like, the groom really... Messed up big time, yeah.
This is it. I mean, don't mess with someone on their wedding day or before or after. Don't call someone stupid.
Exactly. Have you not heard of Bridezilla? And are you going to be messing with a Bridezilla on the day of her wedding? No.
In all of these situations, you'd just like to know more. But I mean, it's sad. It's so sad. I mean, people make the effort to decide to join their lives together.
Yeah.
Whether the wedding is big, small, or medium, it doesn't matter. But they're making this massive commitment. It doesn't matter if it ends after a day or many years. It's still heartbreaking because two people have decided to end this commitment. So I think it's really, really sad.
I think if I were ever, God forbid, in the situation, where it comes to like, okay, should we get a divorce? It's just all the paperwork that would make me take a step back and be like, let's just work it out, because the paperwork is too complicated. And then the counseling sessions, and then the court, like taking rounds of the court. It's just.
And then if you have others involved, it just becomes a really, really, it's a really tricky. And obviously you think of like the kids that are involved in these situations.
Yes.
And so it's hard for them
if there are kids. Yeah. But in a lot of cases, divorces are necessary because there's a lot of abuse, domestic abuse, and all those factors that come into play. So yeah, you just never know the full story.
100%. And that's the thing. In these stories, we don't have the full story, but they are interesting stats. Let's move on to the next story. More interesting stats. The UAE updates its peak times and peak fares, and peak fares will now start at 12 dirhams. So this week, the RTA adjusted its peak times for taxis in Dubai, in line with the decision to change the days of the weekends. So they've shifted. So now, during peak hours, your Dubai taxi that you hail through your app will now start during peak times at 12 dirham. And during off-peak times, it will start at 5 dirham.
So if you're leaving for work right now and you're hailing an RTA taxi, you can expect peak fares. The new timings for peak fares are as follows.
So from Monday to Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then from Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to midnight. And Saturday and Sunday, 4 p.m. to midnight. These are all now the peak times.
I hope you guys were taking notes.
So 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. every single weekday morning. If you get a taxi during that time, if you're hailing it on the Hala Taxi Cream app, it's going to be a start fare of 12 dirham. And if you're going home between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., that's also peak time. So your start fare will be 12 dirham. So that's like during the working week. And then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it gets a little bit longer. So from Friday, 4 p.m. to 12 midnight, that's all peak times. We've seen a surge in people using taxis. It's been getting busier.
Yeah, so this is making my eye twitch. It's just so stressful.
I know.
Fares. And I mean, the only solution to this is companies starting work timings at 11.
Or
increasing salary. Or 7. No, Casey.
I'm just saying, I don't get hit by this in the mornings. In the evening, I'm going to get hit by it.
People don't deserve this. It's just a lot of money.
It is. So I'm trying to remember. I guess the peak hour periods were shorter before.
Yeah. Yeah, they were shorter before. Yes.
And now they've just been increased. So take note. I think if you're getting a taxi regularly, it's something that you'll definitely notice, so just to be aware of. And then I guess if you can go during off-peak hours, then it will also probably reduce traffic on the road. It's just something for us to be mindful of.
Or go in extra early.
Yeah.
Get your work timings changed to 11 a.m. Which I would do if I were you. Now, moving on to our next story, Dubai added more than 1,300 new F&B outlets in 2021. Now, Dubai added more than 1,300 F&B outlets, and stats revealed these stats were revealed by the Dubai municipality that indicate this the 1.3 food outlets opened in Dubai last year, cranking up the total number of F&B establishments in the city to more than 20,000. Now, that's some good Dubai trivia to remember.
Because I remember that is so interesting because I believe when we started Love in Dubai, and I could be way off with this, it was 6 years ago, and I remember hearing the stat that there are 7,500 food outlets in the city. I could be way off again. And we remember being like, wow, that's so competitive. And now we're up to
20,000.
20,000.
Yes, 20,000. Just said it and forgot. But this is so interesting because a friend the other day was asking me about a restaurant. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Then he's like, you work at Love in Dubai. How do you not know this? I'm like, there are thousands of restaurants in the city. You can't really know of each one. But yeah, now we know that the number is 20,000 in Dubai in specific. Now from 11,813 restaurants back in February 2019, it shot up all the way to 20,000 plus, showing how the F&B sector was expanding and thriving even during the pandemic. Now, with the new food trends being introduced to the market on a daily basis, the turnover in the industry is pretty high. And if you know how to play the game right.
Like it's so tricky for the food business here in Dubai. It's very competitive, but it's absolutely thriving. Like the restaurants we have here are like none other. And every time you go to something, like they're always trying to do each other in terms of style, design, and like grammable desserts and stuff. But we're so lucky because there's just so much. But it's so hard because are you loyal to a restaurant? Or are you a loyaler, or do you always look to go out to new places?
Oh, I am a major loyaler. I can't. I mean, like trying out new places doesn't always work for me because I don't get what I want. But like, yeah, once I find the restaurant, I'm always there.
What are you loyal to? What's your OG?
What am I loyal to? I like Hitchki quite a bit. Hitchki, it's you've heard of the LSB in Barsha Heights and Lucky Boys. It's in the same hotel. Yeah. A couple more, I can't remember them now, but like when I was talking about trends, like Squid Games last year, restaurants making desserts and games around that, and
the honeycomb thing.
Yeah, the honeycomb challenge, and just giving out desserts. Like a lot of games, like Just Vegan, they had this whole marble situation going on. So it's like adapting your
food trends.
Keeping
up with food trends.
Yeah, keeping up with food trends. That's like one of the biggest ways that establishments are, okay, you know what, we can pick this up, let's stay more current.
It's interesting because you have the restaurants who manage to survive in Dubai, which are always like the stalwarts, and if they're around for 10 years, that's always incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
And then you do have the ones that go for the food trends. So I remember like 2 years ago, these milkshakes were food trends, and that's what people were going after.
Yeah, and now it's bubble tea.
Bubble tea?
Right, boba tea.
I never got into boba. Do I need to?
Have you not tried it yet?
I think I've like had a sup at one point.
Oh my god, they're like tapioca balls in the drink. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's like having something to chew on while you drink. I
actually saw photos of boba tea. There's a new place called Tiger Sugar. They're already in Deira. They're opening up at Dubai Mall. I saw photos and I was like, it looks really good. Do they have a coffee?
It's so good. But just don't make the mistake of trying a warm drink with tapioca balls. I made that mistake.
Okay.
No, it's not a... No.
Did you buy it warm or it got like warmed outside? Because that sounds gross.
I bought it warm. It was raining that day, so I'm just like, I want something warm, but I want boba tea. So I asked them just if you could warm up the ice wrap instead of making ice wrap, just make it warm. And she's like, are you sure about that?
It was a bad call.
And I'm like, I am so sure it was a very bad call.
Oh, and you just wanted something cozy on a warm day. A warm hug in a cup.
That's exactly what I was going for.
Wanted. What are your OGs? Tell us. You know what? This is the thing about Dubai is that there's so much. And like, if I have someone coming to town, there's like 3 places I might take them. And if you have it, they're probably 3 totally different places. Wild. Or the choice that we have in Dubai is literally wild. But if you have any OGs, we'd love to know because then you help me the next time I have guests in town. Guys, stay tuned. Right now, we're going to be joined by Dr. Arif Khan, who is the founder of the first Children's Neuroscience Center in the region. He's answering your questions about autism with children, even anything from mild headaches and why they might be an issue. So stay tuned. He's going to be with us right after this.
Welcome
back to the Love in Dubai show. Today we are joined by Dr. Arif Khan, who is the founder of the strategic development of Neuropedia, the first comprehensive children's neuroscience centre in the region. Good morning, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an early morning, but I think a good time to start.
I agree. I'm looking forward to get into it. We put some questions on our social media yesterday. We asked some parents if they had any questions for you. So we'll get to those later in the show. But first of all, a little bit background about you. How long have you worked in, I guess, children's development for?
I would say now coming close to 16 years.
The diagnosis of autism in different ways.
And
you being scared
road.
is
And
absolutely a normal reaction that we see with most of the parents that we come across.
Right.
Please remember that you need to give yourself some time to come to terms with it.
It's what I call the new age clinic, where we cater to just one thing, which is children's brain. So we cover children's neurological conditions, their psychological conditions, behavioral, as well as neurodevelopmental conditions and rehabilitation. So we have specialists like neurologists, psychologists, physiotherapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, educational psychologists, dietitians, and we have programs to develop children's attention, their concentration, and so forth. So anything to do with children's brain, we provide those services in Neuropedia. But having said that, I'm currently at King's College Hospital. I provide services to them. So this is not Neuropedia, this is King's College.
Okay. And for example, what type of treatments are we talking? What type of scares are parents looking at that they may be reaching out to you for? What's a kind of a common treatment that you're working with parents on?
Sure. I mean, the most common conditions that we come across are autism. For example, I'm sure everyone would have heard of a condition called autism. It's pretty rampant. About 2%, close to 2% of kids suffer from autism. And then there is ADHD, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, just, regular headaches, migraines, children with congenital or genetic brain disorders, children with spasticity, dystonia, and it goes on. Anything, and because brain controls your entire body, many of the conditions that we come across have an underlying cause within the brain, and that's what we deal with. We have an interdisciplinary team, and that was the main ethos behind starting Neuropedia, because we had, hospitals, for example, you would find a pediatric neurologist in a hospital, but to have a team under one roof is something that we had a vision of, and that's why we brought all the specialists together to develop this team within an umbrella called Neuropedia.
Well, what I was going to say is, why is this needed? So we're saying it's the first comprehensive neuroscience centre in the region. Why was it needed, and was there a massive need for it?
Yeah, there was none. And that's the reason Neuropedia is the first neuroscience centre in UAE. And we cater just not to UAE, to Gulf region around UAE. And we have these specialists in different areas. So within rehabilitation centers, within hospitals and clinics, but we didn't have a single center that brings all these specialists together. So now a patient or a child just needs to enter Neuropedia to get all these expertise under one roof. And that was the main ethos behind this.
Which is amazing for parents, I'm sure. You mentioned autism, and let's talk a little bit about, do you work with schools, for example? If you said 2% of, that's 2% of, is it children, of people have autism. So therefore, how are we looking at kind of the general, okay, so for example, if a parent is concerned, if they come and visit you, do you work with schools, for example? Do you work with schools to make sure that kids are looked after?
Yeah, so it starts off, there are two parts to it. There is the diagnostic aspect and there is the intervention or therapeutic aspect. So the diagnostic aspect starts with either a child neurologist like myself or a child psychiatrist. And we do an initial assessment, we do medical testing, we do observational assessments for children, we take help from our psychologist and behavioral therapist, and we come to a final diagnosis. Now, if a child eventually has a diagnosis of autistic spectrum disorder, we have to get a team in place. And the team includes behavioral therapist, speech therapist, occupational therapist, and of course, a big part is played by the academic environment, which is school. And if this child is going to a mainstream school, we make sure that these services are provided within the schools. We cater to many schools around the region, like GEMS Metropole being one, where we have a specialized transition classroom called Unity there, where it's a stepping stone for these children to develop their skills before they jump into a mainstream classroom. So we are working with a number of schools, not just GEMS Metropole, to develop this transitional kind of phase before they jump into a mainstream classroom. Or, to put it in simple words, preparing these children to develop the skills needed to move ahead.
How have you seen, I guess, schools' development of facilities for kids with special needs grow over the years? Have you seen massive progress?
Yeah, I mean, that all comes under this, the terminology called inclusion. And we have, I mean, the government of Dubai or the government of UAE as a whole has done immense work to establish inclusion within pretty much every school in Dubai. Some of the schools have better provisions, some not so much. They're trying to catch up. But now every school has this kind of underlying principle, but they have to make sure that they have inclusion as a part of their vision or mission within the organization. And yes, it has developed. I've been in the country for 6 years, but I did my initial schooling in Dubai as a young, year 1, year 2 student. I was here in the 70s and 80s. And then the concept didn't exist. But coming on in the last 10 years, it just exploded. And probably Dubai is an example for many other cities and countries, how inclusion needs to be kind of adhered to, and the academic and the therapeutic aspect of the child's needs are brought together.
And how can parents decide on the right schooling or potentially the right placement if their child has special needs?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is acceptance. So once parents know that there is a deficit or a child is not meeting the required skills, they bring this to the attention of the school authorities, or sometimes the school pick it up. It's seen by someone called SENCO, that's a specialized educational needs coordinator, which every school has. And the SENCO then drives the children out for assessments. So they see educational psychologists and these various specialists like speech and occupational therapists, a neurologist, to get to an overall diagnosis and a strategy plan. And then what is developed is an IEP, or individualized educational program, which is kind of tailored to that particular child to bring out the best in that child, keeping in mind the areas that the therapists have to work on. So IEP is the key that we drive to. Yeah.
The work you're doing is fabulous, but what sort of reservations might parents have when it comes to a lot of assessments and a lot of treatment? Do you see reservations among parents?
Yeah, I mean, there are two areas that we've already, addressed this before, and we were trying to kind of overcome these hurdles. One is stigma. So it takes a lot of time for parents to accept a diagnosis. And I, through my social media platforms and Neuropedia's websites and social media platforms, try to drill this into parents that it is not a stigma. It is something that it's like a cold and a cough your child has. You would take your child to a doctor. Similarly, with this, if you find a deficit or a skill deficit in a child, at least get an assessment done, because there's no point hiding under it and saying, okay, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in getting a diagnosis or an assessment and starting the intervention early, because we know the best time an intervention helps a child is between 2 to 4 years of age, which is when the brain grows really rapidly. And that's what we need to utilize. So first thing is the stigma. Once we overcome that, the next step is the financial side of things, because these assessments and these therapeutic interventions are expensive. And sometimes parents cannot afford that. And therefore, we have put certain aspects in place where we have subsidized rates for parents. Schools help out in certain areas. We have certain charities that we reach out to, and we try to incorporate these children within the overall academic plan that we make for the child.
You mentioned looking out for early signs and removing the stigma and then just being aware. So as a parent, what signs would I be looking for that may be of concern?
I mean, that's a very broad question as such. So if you just talk about autism, for example, which forms a big chunk of what we do, early signs of speech delay. So a 1-year-old or 18-month-old child unable to communicate through words. There are no gestures, social deficits. The child doesn't maintain eye contact, doesn't respond to his or her name, doesn't turn to his or her name, doesn't point at objects that he or she wants, cannot communicate his or her demand to parents. A lot of behavior, which is kind of, it's different from what you see within the normal or neurotypical children. And these are the first few signs that parents can pick up and get an assessment done in a center like Neuropedia to then go ahead to develop an individualized plan for the child.
There's a lot of stories in the media about adults finding out that they have autism. So it's very possible to, live a normal life and have autism. So what are the treatments that you would be kind of starting at from an early age that would make a difference to a child's life?
I mean, as I said, between 2 and 4 years of age is the time where you can push and drill in interventions so you can bring about the best possible improvement. And I always kind of advocate this, that we shouldn't try and cure or treat or change your child. That's not the kind of principle behind treatment or of autism. What we try and do is we try and incorporate certain skills within the child so that he or she can live in a society and a world that we have created and the norms that we have built. And sometimes we need to change the way we carry out our academic institutions or something like that to adapt them within that environment. So it's not about cure or treatment, especially with autism. It's about adaptation. And that's something that when I see parents for the first time and a diagnosis is made, I sit down with them and explain to them that don't look for changing your child. Don't look for normality. It doesn't exist. A child with autism has slightly different wiring. It's like they are, say, an Apple or a Mac OS as opposed to us working on a Windows. So we are both softwares in our own right, working through the world. But the problem is the world cannot cater to their software. And that's what we need to do, is change ourselves.
Understood. We asked, like I said, we put the question out on social, and a lot of people's questions were related to migraines and headaches in children. So the first question we got in was, are migraines hereditary, and can they start from 10 years old?
Of course. I mean, the youngest child I had with migraine was 18 months old. So yes, they can start in young age. At 18 months, you would say, how would they tell you? We didn't know, because the 18-month-old cannot communicate their symptoms. So this child was just crying all the time, and we did various diagnoses, then dug deep into the familial history, and we picked up that there's a strong familial migraine history, and that's how we picked up the diagnosis in the child. And after treatment, it went away. So yes, migraine does occur in children. I see at least 3 to 4 patients every day with migraine who are less than 10 years of age. And yes, it does run in families, but it is not a disorder where 50% of your children will have migraine if I have it. No, it's not that. But it's more likely that you will have migraine if your parents or your grandparents had migraine. So it's familial. That's the terminology we use for migraine. Yeah.
The next question is, my baby vomits when I give her vitamin D. What should I do?
It probably is not vitamin D. It's what the vitamin D is made up of, or the taste of the vitamin D, or the texture of the vitamin D supplementation. So if you change the texture, like instead of syrup, you give a tablet or a capsule, or you change the brand itself, to sort the problem out.
Why does my 5-year-old keep complaining about headaches on the left side of her temple?
Oh, it could be a number of reasons. So if you have a persistent chronic headache in a 5-year-old, you have to get them checked. And the most important thing is get their eyes checked, because that's something that gets ignored most of the time. And you correct their vision with a pair of glasses and things just sort out. But having said that, any serious illnesses, like whether it is a brain problem or increased pressure in the head, that needs to be looked at by a neurologist. So get her checked.
And finally, this is my own personal question. My boyfriend has severe migraines, and he has had since he was a teenager, since early years. They're debilitating. I've never seen someone so affected by a migraine. They come on, they take like a day or two, and then they really just wipe him out physically. What can be done?
I mean, the treatment of migraine, you can divide it into 2, depending upon the frequency of the migraine, that is how often it comes, and the intensity of the migraine, that if it's not frequent, is it very severe? So, and based on that, there are 2 forms of treatment. You give prophylactic treatment, which is you take a medication on a daily basis to reduce the frequency of the headaches. Or if your headaches are not frequent, the migraines are happening once a month, you take something to reduce the intensity, that is called symptomatic treatment. And for example, I don't know whether your boyfriend, is he someone who has it on a monthly basis or weekly? But if it's monthly, once a month, so it's symptomatic treatment. So they take Immigrants, for example. These are specific migraine-related symptomatic treatments that can be just popped into the mouth just when the headache starts. It reduces the intensity and the length of the headache.
Thank you so much. That has been very insightful, but I'm sure we've only kind of covered the tip of the iceberg. This was Dr. Arif Khan, who is the founder of strategic development of Neuropedia, the first comprehensive children's neuroscience centre in the region. If people would like to reach out to you, if I'm sure there's parents watching, if they have questions, how can they do so?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm on social media anyway, so it's at dr.arif.khan. They can send out a message through that. It might take me a few days because, that is not a clinical platform, but they can reach out. They can call up 343-1113. That's the phone number for Neuropedia. And if they want to see me directly, they could book an appointment, or they could come over to King's College Hospital.
Perfect. We really, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much. And that was very insightful. Guys, that's it for us on the show. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.